For some time now, there's been rumours online that the next classic Doctor Who Blu-ray box set in the BBC's Doctor Who The Collection series, after the season 26 box that's coming out later this month, is going to be season 14. And God, it's actually true. It's true, I tell you. Do you hear me? True. And I am very excited, as you might be able to tell. So in this video, I'm going to look at the glorious cover of this new season 14 Blu-ray set. I'm going to remind us all of the serials that lurk within, and of course we're going to traipse through the details of the special features on this box. Oh yes, if you're a fan of classic Doctor Who and Blu-ray box sets, and in particular Tom Baker's era, you are going to want to watch this video right to the end. Do not deny this reality. Hello there, you stupendous Sontaran, and welcome to Jason Arnott's terrifying House of Obsession, the YouTube channel that specialises in classic Doctor Who, plus other retro delights such as horror VHS and some retro video games. I am Jason Arnott, the author of The Last Days of Jack Sparks, new novel Ghoster, and Doctor Who stuff. If you're already accustomed to this channel and like it, then you might want to support me on Patreon, so have a look down there in the video description for the details on that. Also down there in the video description you'll find a link to the Amazon page for this new season 14 box set, so you can get it pre-ordered. Anyway, let's get on with this because I can't wait to look at the new artwork of the season 14 box. Isn't this exciting? This is very exciting. I always find these releases exciting, but this feels particularly so because season 14, to the best of my memory, was when I started watching Doctor Who. Let's have a look at the cover right now. We're diving straight in with a look at the full cover, and that is beautiful, isn't it? Another lovely piece of work from Lee Binding. The fourth Doctor there, obviously in his Talons of Wayne guise. Obviously that's one of the serials in this season, and we'll be going through them all. And then of course we've got a robot of death, a scary hooded figure from the Mask of Mandragora. You've got Eldrad from the Hand of Fear. Eldrad must live, incidentally. And then of course you have Weng Chiang himself, aka Magnus Greel. I love this. And the Doctor's holding the, I believe that is the Trionic Lattice there in his hand. It's beautiful. And of course there we have the rat tunnel, which is nice. Always good to have a rat tunnel in the background. Yeah, I think that's gorgeous. I love the colours of it, and as usual I love the assembled foes all together. I love that kind of thing because it kind of looks like they're all together in one place. And now let's have a look at the entire pack shot that includes the discs inside and the leaflets and all the rest of it. Oh, there's a nice bit of Deadly Assassin going on there on the front of that leaflet. And is that, yes, that must be the face of evil, with the Doctor leaving the TARDIS and about to run into Leela for the first time, of course, in one of the serials which we're about to discuss. Yeah, the pictures on the discs are a bit monster light, but as I've said before, you can't be too hard on the designs on the discs in these things, because it's not as if we're going to spend much time looking at them. They're going to come out of the box and go straight into the player. And besides, all the monsters are on the cover. So I don't know about you, but that looks just like a luscious thing, doesn't it? That just looks like a luscious must-have item that I intend to have on my shelf next to the others in this range. Well done again to Lee Binding. Incidentally, you'll see Lee Binding and several other people behind the collection range in a video that I uploaded back in October from the MCM Comic-Con. In this video they're chatting about the whole collection range, and in particular season 26, so I'll put a card to it up there. Right, let's talk about all the serials in this box set, because it is a quite stunning lineup. I think you'll agree, and if you don't agree, or if you do agree, I want to hear from you regardless in comments, and I want us to have a big chat about this release. So the first serial in season 14 is The Mask of Mandragora, And I'm really looking forward to revisiting this because I haven't seen it in quite some time. I think the last time I saw The Mask of Mandragora might have been the 1990s when I was 1 year old. Okay, can't quite get away with that one, can I? It's entirely possible that The Mask of Mandragora was the first ever Doctor Who serial I saw back in 1976. I'm a little bit unclear about it because I also remember from the previous season, Pyramids of Mars and The Brain of Morbius. Maybe I saw those later in repeats, I don't know, but Mask of Mandragora was certainly one of the first. I would be lying if I said it made an enormous impression in my mind in the same way that certain other serials from this season did, but I remember it being scary. My young mind was somewhat disturbed by the sight of all these scary hooded figures with these really quite frightening kind of angry, scornful masks. And I remember a scene, maybe it was a cliffhanger, was it? When one of the hoods stands empty with some kind of purple glow inside it, you know. Oh yeah. This story is set in 15th century Italy. It was directed by Rodney Bennett and written by Louis Marks. The Doctor's companion in this story is of course Sarah Jane Smith, played by the much missed Elizabeth Sladen.
Oh, this looks good.
And this is in fact Sarah Jane's penultimate story. Obviously she would make a glorious comeback with School Reunion in 2006 and then everything else that followed with the Sarah Jane Adventures. I actually wrote a Sarah Jane Adventures audio story myself called Deadly Download. Let's move on to the second story, which is The Hand of Fear.
Run, Doctor!
Can you imagine my young mind trying to comprehend this hand made out of stone, a severed hand made out of stone that starts crawling around inside some kind of Tupperware box? Yeah, that definitely was a brain scarer, and no mistake. The Hand of Fear I found really scary, and it has the added authenticity of being set inside, at least for the first 2 or maybe 3 episodes, a real nuclear power plant. There's a lot of inbuilt production value there that the team really made use of. And I rewatched The Hand of Fear, I think last year at some point. I think it was with my mum, which was nice, and we both enjoyed it very much. This story was directed by Lenny Mayne, who Toby Hadeke made a documentary about in one of the previous box sets. I can't quite remember which one, but I do remember it was a really good documentary. Toby makes really good stuff. The Hand of Fear was written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who of course were just about to create K9 in the following season. And very notably, as I kind of intimated earlier, this is Sarah Jane Smith's final story. She takes all her goodies and heads off back into the wilds of Croydon at the conclusion of this story, leaving the Doctor to head to Gallifrey all by himself. And the result of that is one of my very favourite Doctor Who stories. We're talking top 10 in classic Doctor Who easily. It's The Deadly Assassin, of course, set on Gallifrey, featuring a severely decayed master who's lurking beneath the Time Lord's citadel like some kind of horrible spider in his cowl and with his horrible ping pong ball eyes. His face just scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. I mean, his face actually looks like real flesh. It was really well done. It was a great example of Doctor Who probably being a little too scary. Although, of course, the story got into trouble more for violence, I guess, thanks to Mary Whitehouse and her interfering nonsense. The cliffhanger to part 3 became subject to a great deal of controversy and actually influenced the toning down of the violence in subsequent seasons. So thanks for that, Mary. Yeah, cheers. Directed by David Maloney and written by the Grand Master himself, Robert Holmes, The Deadly Assassin is just an absolute doozy. I love the Master in it. I love the whole Matrix style world that the Doctor enters in search of his nemesis, and I just love everything about it. It's got a really dark atmosphere and I really appreciate that, as you might imagine. Next up in season 14, directed by Pennant Roberts and written by Chris Boucher, it's The Face of Evil. Now this may well be one of the least celebrated serials, probably the least celebrated serial perhaps in season 14, hard to say. Tell me what you think in comments. But there's a big but coming up. I like big buts and I cannot lie. This is Leela's first story, hooray! The first story featuring Louise Jameson as the wonderful companion Leela.
Take me with you.
And we meet her as part of her 17 tribe. Again, as with Mask, it's been a while since I went back and took a proper look at The Face of Evil, but I remember it being perfectly good. The only reason why this is one of the least celebrated stories of season 14 is that the other serials are so enormous and so damn good. That's the only reason why. It doesn't mean that it's a bad serial by any stretch of the imagination. And I remember the mad computer Zoanon being quite frightening and taking on the Doctor's face, and there's a whole room full of walls of the Doctor's face shouting and generally caterwauling, and that I admire. When in doubt, say that I admire in any given YouTube video. So I'm very much looking forward to going back and reliving The Face of Evil. I mean, how bad can it be? It's got evil in the title, for God's sake. There are 2 serials left in season 14 to talk about, and they're both absolute storming corkers. The first is the Robots of Death, which again frightened me witless as a child. The robots in this story on a sand miner are really just so superbly well designed, with this really unusual and distinctive Art Deco feel. And they're marvellous, from everything from the design to the faces to the voices of the robots. This kind of cool, calm and collected voice telling you that it needs to kill you is quite frightening. Robots of Death is obviously also a great whodunit story. It's just fantastic all round. Yeah. This one was directed by Michael E. Bryant and written by, again, Chris Boucher. A nice 1-2 there from the Boucher, knocking it out of the park. I may well do a dedicated video about the Robots of Death as well as the Deadly Assassin and the next story I'm about to talk about, so I won't go into too much detail because you probably want to hear about the special features, and I'll get to those in just 1 minute. But first, let me tell you about the final serial in season 14, because it's enormous. It's one of the greatest Doctor Who serials of all time. It's the Talons of Wayne, a 6-part story. So this is a bumper season. There's 6 stories and one of them is a 6-parter. And of course, the Talons of Wayne is set in Victorian London. The main villain seems to be a Chinese stage magician called Weng Chiang, surprisingly enough, but he is in fact a horrible wartime butcher called Magnus Greel from the 51st century.
Let the talons of Wayne Chiang shred your flesh!
Once again, this is an absolutely terrifying story. I found Greel himself to be frightening enough, especially at the end of part 5 when we see his horrifying face. But on top of that, he's got an absolutely petrifying right-hand man in the shape of Mr. Sin, who is a diminutive killer robot who just looks absolutely horrifying. And it doesn't help that he's got the brain of a pig in his head or something like that.
Kill Sin! Kill him! Come on, quick! Get down! Get down!
Ridiculous, but also glorious and genuinely frightening. Directed by David Maloney and written once again by Robert Holmes, The Talons of Weng Chiang is just an absolute doozy. So that's all the serials in season 14. Now let's find out what special features are going to be on this Doctor Who The Collection Blu-ray box set. Here is part of the BBC press release that I received about this, and of course I'm going to go straight down here until we get to the special features, because that's what we're particularly interested in. Immersive 5.1 sound on the Deadly Assassin. That's really cool. As indeed are brand new audio commentaries featuring Tom Baker and Matthew Sweet on selected episodes. I wonder how many episodes that actually is. Selected episodes of The Face of Evil and The Talons of Weng Chiang. It's always nice when Tom is on these things, because I guess if we're being honest, compared to some other doctors, you know, who are quite willing to participate quite a lot of the time, or even most of the time, Tom is more of a rarity, isn't he? So it's nice when he does pop up. And once again, look at this, he's on Behind the Sofa. New episodes with Tom Baker, Louise Jameson, Philip Hinchcliffe, who was of course the producer of season 14 and a few other seasons of Doctor Who besides. Also Sophie Aldred and Peter Purves. That's fantastic. In case you don't know what Behind the Sofa is, it's basically BBC Studios' answer to Gogglebox, which is a British TV show in which people sit on a sofa at home and watch TV, and then they appear on TV watching TV and giving their opinions on it. And it fits Doctor Who really well. I think it's a lot of fun. It's kind of light and breezy, and it's also really interesting to see people relive these TV shows that they made decades ago as well. And also certain people might be watching it for the first time, so that's really cool. Now then, Our Sarah Jane, Elizabeth Sladen Tribute, a feature-length look at the life and career of Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen. Yeah, I'll buy that for $1. I think we'll be having some of that. Yeah, that's going to be great. Who's Doctor Who Revisited? Toby Hadeke meets the producers and grown-up stars of the very first Who documentary. Now that's interesting. I can kind of vaguely remember Who's Doctor Who, but I haven't seen that for a while. I wonder if the actual documentary itself is available anywhere. If you know, tell me in comments, because that documentary, now that I think about it, might hold a certain amount of nostalgia for me. Interesting. Now, this next special feature is of particular interest to me. Yeah, I think it's going to be really nice to see a new interview with Philip Hinchcliffe talking about his era, which was, of course, marked by lots of gothic trappings and lots of homages to Hammer horror movies and the like. And Matthew Sweet's a good interviewer, so I think this should be a really good one. Now, here's the Blu-ray trailer. I won't reveal the amusing surprise of this trailer, but as you can see from this clip, it stars Louise Jameson herself, and I'll put a link in the video description down below so you can enjoy it yourself. And then we have brand new interviews, rare archive material, convention footage, and HD photo galleries. And rounding that little lot off, let's see, there's something else. Yeah, scripts, costume designs, rare production files, and other gems from our PDF archive. So there's the special features on this release for your pleasure. Now, if you're a bit like me and the making of documentaries are your favourite part of any special features when it comes to classic Doctor Who, then you might be thinking, oh, I wish there was a couple of extra documentaries. But it has to be said that the original DVD releases had making of documentaries on them, and all that stuff, I believe all that stuff anyway, is going to be on this release. And in fairness to the BBC Studios team, how many making ofs can you make? Once you've done one making of, there isn't really room for another, so I can see why they're diversifying the content and maybe looking at other things that haven't been covered before, because the original DVD special features will be in there. And stories like the Talons of Wayne have been re-released as special editions in these Revisitations box sets. You can see the Talons cover there, and that's absolutely full of stuff, so I'm hoping that all of these things, things like Foe from the Future, a look at the unmade story that turned into the Talons of Wayne, lots of stuff. I'm hoping that it's all going to be on this new release. And of course the Robots of Death was in Revisitations 3 as well, so that's had a special edition release, and hopefully things like the documentary on that one, the Sand Mine Murders, will be on this Blu-ray set too. Do stay tuned to this channel for more coverage of this season 14 release, and also of the imminent season 26 release, which is coming to us at the end of January. If you don't want to miss any of that stuff, then hit subscribe. Also, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. It's all very good for the algorithm. And above all, get down there in comments so we can have a big chat about this release. I want to know what you think about it. Thanks very much to my Patreon patrons who support this channel and help me improve it and grow it. I'll leave you with a few video suggestions that you might want to carry on watching. Funnily enough, they're all about Doctor Who. Until we meet down in comments, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to embrace your obsessions.